Aloha, my name is Nainoa Thompson. I'm the president of the Polynesian Voyaging Society. The Polynesian Voyaging Society sails our double-hull voyaging canoe called Hokule'a. And Hokule'a is a performance-accurate replica of what we believe were the deep-sea ocean-going canoes that were used to explore and colonize Polynesia. The dream of Hokule'a came out of the vision of our extraordinary founders and teachers. Dr. Ben Finney, who was an anthropologist, wanted to build a voyaging canoe and sail it from Hawaii back to Tahiti to dispute the claims of Western scholars saying that Polynesia, as big as it is, the Polynesians didn't have the sailing skills to sail far, and so that the colonization of Polynesia was all by accident. It was all by fluke, which contradicted our oral traditions of our great navigators and our great canoes. And I think the one that's most hurtful is when the Western scholars said that the Polynesians didn't have the intelligence to navigate more than 100 miles. So Dr. Ben Finney wanted to challenge those claims by building a voyaging canoe. And he met with and got together with a man by the name of Herb Kawainui Kane, who was Hawaii's, I argue, is Hawaii's greatest artist and historian, who wrapped around the purpose, the scientific purpose, with cultural renewal and re-strengthening our understanding of who we were and therefore who our children ought to believe they are through capturing an extraordinary heritage that we were not teaching in our schools. It's interesting that Hokule'a represents the deep-sea voyaging canoes that were used to explore and colonize the islands in the Pacific back 2,000 years when there was no instruments at all. That the way that they navigated these canoes were reading understanding and reading the signs of nature, at least the ocean clues, and that would be from the heavens, the stars, the sun, the moon, even the planets, and then the atmosphere, reading the winds and the clouds, and also the face of the ocean, the shape of the waves, the direction of the waves, and even what we call sea life, looking at how the behavior of seabirds and things and fish in the sea to help find islands that are scattered thousands of miles apart. We launched Hokule'a in March 8th, 1975. We made the first voyage to Tahiti in 1976. We've collectively, over the last 3 decades, sailed over 110,000 nautical miles and 6 voyages down to Polynesia, as well as to the Pacific Northwest. And in 2007, in January 6th, we're planning another deep-sea ocean voyage, first to Micronesia, to the homeland of our teacher by the name of Mau Piailug, who was, at the time when we launched Hokule'a, there were no Polynesian deep-sea navigators left, but in Micronesia there were still 6 that come from a 3,000-year legacy transmitted from generation to generation. Mau was, like I say, one of 6 people on Earth that could navigate Hokule'a back to Tahiti. He did that in 1976, and then he's been our teacher for the last 30 years. We're going to Micronesia to honor him for all that he's given to us culturally in Hawaii. And then once we leave Micronesia from the island of Palau, we're planning to sail up to Japan. And we will initially sail up to Okinawa, to Naha, we guess, depending on the weather and our sail plan, around the 1st of April. And then we're looking at making 7 other stops in Japan that are very significant to both Hawaii's past as well as Hawaii's future. Because we're going to go to the major ports of the first immigrants that left Japan and came to Hawaii, And ever since then, the 5 generations of Japanese family in Ohana in Hawaii that have shaped where we are today and to a large degree shape our future. And so our voyage to Japan is in a humble way to honor and pay respect to those early ancestors, the early immigrants that came to Hawaii. It's interesting to me when I hear the stories about those first people who came to Hawaii who were very poor. And in the last 200 years of change in Hawaii, Native Hawaiians, basically, it's a history and a legacy of loss. Hawaiians lost their land, they lost their form of government, they lost their sense of culture, they lost their population from the time of Captain Cook came until about, our population dropped from about 800,000 to 42,000, so 19 out of 20 didn't make it. It's a very depressive and crushing history. And so when the Japanese immigrants came to Hawaii, Hawaiians were very poor. That was financially, they had no land, but the real crushing issue of poverty was the loss of spirit and the loss of culture and the loss of hope. But it was those two cultures that really galvanized and lived together in such a wonderful way, because I heard the stories. And we want to honor those stories by coming to Japan and really hoping that through reconnecting those ports of call to our people in Hawaii through our children. There's 5 generations now of Japanese who have made Hawaii their home, and we want to help preserve and capture and preserve and transmit those stories about that relationship in a way in which we hope that this voyage, in a very small and simple way, will bring about a sense of a respect between global cultures, especially in the Pacific, and ultimately bring a sense of peace. Hokule'a is a tool to recover and recapture our past. It's in doing so brings strength and dignity to our ancestors, our culture, and our heritage, and that's something that we give our children as a foundation of self-worth, so they can grow up into the 21st century in a complex and confusing world, but being strong in who they are because they know where they come from.